Hello and welcome to episode number 6 of the Allo and Ace podcast. I am the allosexual Skylar.
And I'm the asexual Jessie.
Hey, Jessie.
Hey, Skylar.
How are you doing?
I feel like that's a loaded question.
Probably.
This morning, but I will get into that a bit more when we start getting into the topic of today's episode.
All right.
It falls right in.
Well, I just interrupted you.
That's okay.
I'm excited.
I'm excited, but I'm a little bit nervous. Yes.
Before we get started, we're going to start with our normal disclaimers that this is a sexuality podcast where we discuss sexual things and asexuality.
I'm sorry, sexual things.
Yes. So if that's not your jam, then,
This might just not be your jam.
Yeah. Oftentimes in this podcast, we can talk about other triggers such as SA and self-harm and stuff like that. So just if you're listening and you start to feel a certain way or your mental health is being affected, we ask you to stop it, pause it, and get that back to where it needs to be.
Yeah.
The other thing that we want to say is that you can reach out to us on all of our socials. You can just do a search for Allo and Ace on probably most platforms and socials, and you will find us. And we love to have you guys reach out and talk to us.
Yeah. Over the last week, we have received so many great messages, and it's been fun talking to the community that is listening to this podcast.
100%. For this episode specifically, we actually have a worksheet / workbook, whatever you want to call it, that you can, we're actually suggesting that you go to our website and either print it off, download it, or look at it however you want to. The website is allo, A-L-L-O, and ace, A-C-E.com. And at alloandace.com, there is a subpage called Workbooks. And if you click on that, you will find it.
And there you will be able to print it or download it. It is completely free. And we hope that it is a helpful guide.
Yes.
One other thing that we have added to the website is we have this cute little icon on the website that looks like a purple coffee mug. Is that right?
It's a purple circle with a little coffee cup in it.
Okay, cool. We have added that. If you are a fan of this show, of this podcast, and you would like to, donate a coffee is pretty much the gist of the icon.
Yeah, most people are aware of the Buy Me a Coffee app or website, and that's what we have set up for now.
Yeah, there's no pressure here, no obligation, but we do know that with people that become a fan of the podcast or the show, sometimes they want to contribute to it, and that is an easy way to do that.
Yep. If this is your first time listening, we do suggest that you start from the very beginning. I'm sure Jessie could sing a little song about that.
Yeah. Let's start at the very beginning. Is that what you're getting at? that really confused me for a minute.
Yeah, that did not catch on.
I'm all flustered.
She's like, what do I do?
Do a dear.
Yeah, so episodes 1 through 5, we talk a lot about our history. We talk about boundaries, respect bridges, triggers. And so we don't suggest that you start with number 6 just because this is the episode about starting over.
Right, which is a big deal.
Yes. So let's get into it. Going off of the polls that we did on the 4th episode, we know that the majority of the audience is asexual. There are also allosexual listeners as well. Most likely it is a couple that is listening. And we also know that there are some single asexual people listening. So with that said, we wanted to make sure that this was a starting over, not just for a couple, but for anyone who's listening to it. So we're going to go into starting over with yourself, which includes not only you as yourself, but your partner also needs to start over for themselves.
Right.
And then also we'll get into, the things you can do as a couple. And for those that are single that are listening, it's a way for you to start maybe with your new relationships, or as you start dating, you can utilize some of these worksheets and these ideas into the dating process of finding another partner.
Right. And I also know that just thinking back to 9-10 months ago when I discovered I was asexual, it really was like a fresh start. And I wish that I would have had maybe some guidelines to follow, because it's been an up and down roller coaster. Not to say that it won't be an up and down roller coaster for you as well, even with some of this help, but it can help. It can be helpful.
And we are pretty much using this workbook as the process of going through this episode. So you should be able to follow along with the worksheet as we are going through this episode.
Right.
We will just be adding more to what's on the page. And also, this isn't guaranteed to fix your relationship. What this is a way for you to really start over and hopefully build on a foundation of a fresh start, as well as there are a lot of people who have reached out or that are listening where they haven't had many conversations and the communication in their relationship hasn't been great. And so while we're not, promising that this is going to fix anything, if you do use this and you truly have a fresh start in your relationship and you use some of these as a tool to start over, I don't see how your relationship couldn't improve.
I think it's a good opportunity to be curious with yourself and be curious in your relationship or future relationships.
Yes.
Right.
So we want to start off with the self-acceptance sheet. And this is going to be starting over for yourself, because there are a lot of asexual people who have a hard time with self-acceptance and self-love when it comes to their asexuality.
And you can feel like you have all the acceptance in the world, but that doesn't mean that you're going to not have any bad days. They still creep up and happen. So, for instance, I'm in therapy currently for self-acceptance of my asexuality.
So this is not a black and white, like you don't have it, then you have it. This is a process. It's a journey. And you can move 5 steps forward and then something happens and now you're 6 steps back.
You might actually be back at square one sometimes, or feel like you are.
Yeah.
So for the self-acceptance part of this, we have 4 different sections. And so we're going to start with number 1, which is education and exploration.
And we made these into promises. So these are like, to start over, I promise to do the following.
Right.
And these are the 4 things that you are promising to do, or 4 sections. And there's, subtitles with them. So we're going to go through those right now.
Yeah. So in education and exploration, I promise to take the time to educate myself about different aspects of sexuality, including diverse sexual orientations, gender identities, and relationship dynamics.
This is something where not only do you want to know about yourself, but it's also good to know about your partner. I, as an allosexual, I might know my sexuality, but that doesn't mean that I know all of the diverse aspects of asexuality that my partner might be experiencing. And so this is where, even though I need to have self-acceptance for myself and understand mine, I also need to understand my partner or the person that I'm dating if I'm single.
It's also great to have an understanding of the family members and friends around you as well.
Yeah, just doing this generally is going to make you a more open-minded individual when it comes to the different sexual orientations and even gender identities and different relationship dynamics, even if that's including people who are polyamorous or who practice ethical non-monogamy.
Right. The next thing that I promise to do is explore resources such as books, podcasts, and online forums that provide information and perspectives on sexuality.
And that's something that you can do anonymously. Like, you don't have to use your name, you don't have to use your personal information, but there are a lot of books, there's a lot of different podcasts. I mean, there's less, I would say, podcasts when it comes to the allo ace aspect. We still might be the only one, but there are online forums and things like that. I would suggest to be careful. There are quite a few negative forums that you can stumble upon or be a part of where it might, mask itself as something that is a resource, but you just want to be careful with, what is being done in those different forums to make sure that it is aligning with your goal. If your goal is to understand your partner and understand your relationship better and have something positive, then, kind of see if that's giving you a positive vibe or a negative vibe.
Right. And for resources, I mean, this definitely includes different social media platforms like TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and all the many others that are out there. But you can think that you're in a safe place. Say, I'm going to use TikTok as an example because I just had an experience this morning that really surprised me. In our Allo and Ace feed on TikTok, we really try to keep the algorithm LGBTQ plus friendly.
Yeah.
Okay. So queer community friendly. And unfortunately, this morning, I came across a video that did not feel that way. And you would have thought that it would have been a safe video. It painted a picture of really excluding anything outside of LGBT. And then what was even worse is I found myself in the comments, which I shouldn't have done because the video itself was already upsetting. And then I went into the comments and there were lots of comments about, even dropping the T in LGBT. So I just, I'm sitting here trying to find my footing. And I didn't think that something like that could affect me that big, but it did. I was really not okay with it. I'm like, gosh, here I thought that it was good that we were all finding ourselves. And there was a lot of not great talk about identifying as non-binary. And I mean, really just excluding letters that fell after the T.
Yeah.
So what I'm saying here is there are so many great resources, but make sure that you don't check the comments sometimes.
Or if you do, just, don't invest too much energy and time into it, especially if it is causing negativity.
Right. Be careful with it. Another thing to promise is to engage in self-reflection and introspection to better understand your own desires, preferences, and boundaries.
Yeah, and so we talk about in the third episode about boundaries, and this is where you really need to understand, like, how do I feel about X? How do I feel about Y? And like, learn, don't just look at the societal norms, but look at what it is that you actually desire. What is it that you actually prefer? What are boundaries that you really believe will keep you safe and mentally healthy?
Right. And sometimes that does take a little bit of hands-on experience if you're in a safe place to have hands-on experience. And you might not know that something is a really big boundary or preference until it is like blaring in your face, obvious.
Yeah, and it's not something that you have to 100% know. I think that we've all been in situations before where something happened and afterwards we're like, yeah, I did not like that. And so that's where you can own that situation and say, okay, that's something now that I know is a boundary that I didn't know before.
Mm-hmm. So the next section is practice mindfulness techniques and self-compassion. So I promise to practice mindfulness techniques to stay present and non-judgmental about my thoughts and feelings regarding sexuality. Oof. That can be so hard. It is so easy to type it up on a little paper or to tell someone to do that.
Yeah.
But wow, is it complex when you put it into practice.
And from an allosexual side, I promise to not judge asexuality. Like, I can have all the thoughts and feelings I want and understand myself and understand that I have certain desires and certain wants. But if I start like throwing that onto my partner and judging and feeling like, well, it's normal for people to feel this. Well, by me saying it's normal for people to feel this, like, we already know that asexuality is quote unquote abnormal. That's why it's called asexual, just like atypical. So they already know that they are a minority, obviously like around 1% that we know of. And so pushing that and having that isn't going to make them feel any better. It's about being open-minded and understanding that it is real and that it does exist, and being a better ally and a better partner.
Right. The next one is, I promise to cultivate self-compassion by treating yourself with kindness and understanding, especially when facing internalized shame or societal pressures.
Jessie, I think she deals with this one pretty much on a daily basis. Because we've talked about like feeling that shame, especially in episode 1 and 2, and the societal pressures. Anytime that we have a disagreement or a trigger that happens, like we talked about in episode 5 with triggers, all those internal shames and societal pressures come back to her.
Mm-hmm. It just layers and layers and layers.
So having that self-compassion and like being kind to yourself and being like, yes, this triggered me, and like, that's okay.
Yeah, which is also easier said than done. Mm-hmm. But if you can be aware of it and catch it when possible, then that's great. I promise to challenge negative self-talk and replace it with affirming and empowering statements that reinforce my worth and validity. This one kind of ties into the one we just said. Oh, the negative self-talk. One thing that comes to mind is, Skylar and I have talked about our friend groups and how much ethical non-monogamy plays a big part in our friend group. I mean, it's a lot. Basically. It's what, like 98%?
Yeah.
Yeah.
The majority of people we hang out with.
Right. And I love that for them. I really do. I love these people so much.
And we will have a future episode. I don't know that it's going to be the next one, but there will be a future episode on ethical non-monogamy.
Yeah. In these situations, it can be difficult sometimes when there are things right in front of your face that you are just like, it just makes you feel like, I am such a prude. Oh my gosh, I'm such a prude. I'm such a prude. And then you have like this societal voice that's like, shut up. You're not a prude. This isn't a big deal. This is fun. This is exciting. How fun that they do this. It's so exciting. And it's just these battling voices. And one thing that my therapist told me in my last session was, when I have those self-talk moments that are not good, they're negative, I need to think about somebody that I that I really don't like, that has said some ridiculous things to me.
Which that will probably be somewhere in a future episode as well.
Yeah, we shouldn't get into it right now.
Well, not to like a large depth, I guess.
Yeah. Well, there was a gentleman. I don't even know why I'm saying gentleman. Ooh. Anyway, there was this person. And he said some very unfortunate things to me several times over the course of several years, which related to, you owe me sex. We can be friends if you'll just give me sex. You owe it to me. And when I think...
You led me on. I just need to get this out of my system.
Yeah. And so I just need to think of him. Because when I think of him saying that to me, I feel very strongly to be like, shut up. You're dumb. Honestly, I just think it's ridiculous. So I'm trying to put, when I have those self-talk moments where I'm thinking to myself, I'm such a prude, I'm boring, I think of that person saying that to me and how much I would reject them saying that to me, and just punching them in the face a bit mentally.
Well, and then I think in the last couple episodes, we talked about how you sometimes have like this wingman in your mind of like picturing me dating other people. And I think part of it could be that you subconsciously are like trying to find if you could be okay with that in some weird way.
Yep.
And yeah, so you just got to watch like the negative self-talk and affirm yourself like I am smart, I am beautiful, I am worthy, I am enough.
Yeah.
I am whole. I am not broken.
Yeah. Well, and it's so crazy because it can go so polar opposite ends. Like 1 minute you could be thinking, I'm such a prude, I'm boring, I'm not enough. And then, the next minute you're like, okay, if you don't like that, then get out.
You know where the door is.
You know where the door is. The brain is so interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The next part is connect with supportive communities. So I promise to seek out communities and social spaces where I feel accepted and supported in my sexuality.
A lot of people can probably relate to this on a religious aspect.
Yeah.
Like the reason why there are meeting houses, if you will, churches, it's so that you can find people with similar beliefs to you, whether that's Baptist, Catholic, Mormon, and it's a way for you to come together and be around people that have the same thoughts and the same mindset and beliefs as you do. So look at it like that way. Like you want to seek out communities. There's oftentimes meetups. There's, Pride Week. There's all these things that you can go to where you can find people who are in the same mindset and the same beliefs, the same space as you.
Mm-hmm. The video that I watched this morning that made me upset, the other half of that video that was not cool in my book was they were discussing labels in a negative way. And I get it. There are a lot of labels out there. There are a lot of labels being created all the time. And I know that it can be hard to keep up. However, there is a reason that these labels are being created. People are desperately searching for community and love. And I think that it can be a really healthy thing if it is helping you find those communities.
Well, and that's similar to like a bisexual person who's like, well, I like women, but I'm not a lesbian. And I like men, but I'm not straight. So where do I go if I'm not straight, but I'm not a lesbian?
Yeah, there's been a lot of content on the bisexual issues around finding community and having a hard time finding community.
And with that also, and I don't know that we need to get into it in any major depth, but there's this idea of not erasing identities. Just because you are a male in a male-female relationship, that doesn't mean that you're still not bisexual, even though you're presenting in a heterosexual relationship. Mm-hmm. It's okay to own and be bisexual, even though you're in a quote unquote normal looking relationship at the moment.
I hate to bring this video up for another time, but there were different aspects of it. And one of the examples this person used in their video was going after people that identify as queer and non-binary. And the example that they used was that they walked up to a couple and they said, we're queer and we're non-binary. And the male presenting person looked like a lumberjack and the female presenting person looked like a fairy. And, this person was basically saying, this is ridiculous. You obviously look like you're just a man and you obviously just look really feminine. But I don't think that that's cool at all because someone that's non-binary could look completely different day to day, hour to hour.
Yeah, and I mean, Jessie is not gender fluid, but she is very androgynous and can look, multiple ways.
I can look very different. As you have probably seen on our Instagram account, I think that there's been a decent variety of pictures of me put out there.
Yeah.
So I'm not into excluding. I'm just not. I'm just going to say it. So seek out communities where you really do feel safe. Mm-hmm. And sometimes communities that you think are going to be safe, they end up not being safe. And so you need to check in with that and make the right choice when that comes up. Okay. I promise to surround myself with friends, family members, or online groups who affirm and validate my identity and experiences. This can be so hard.
Yeah, and this is different than the number one. So the number one is more about like social outings and communities. This is more about like internal, like bubble, like groups of friends and family.
Yeah. And that can be tricky because you could be really close to your family, but they do not understand you in that way at all.
And it's okay to cut people out of your life, even temporarily. If you have an aunt or an uncle or even a parent who is just very negative and not affirming of your identity or your experience, it's okay to say, I can't talk to you anymore for a while.
Yeah, you can do it kindly. You can also try to set some boundaries that say, hey, I just don't feel like this is a productive thing for you to talk to me about or for me to talk to you about.
Yeah, while I'm around you, please don't bring this up.
Yeah, and guess what? That's not easy to do either. But I promise you, if you practice doing it, it will get so much better. The person you're saying it to might be shocked at first, like, what? But I'm telling you, the big sigh of relief that you can feel in the days following, that you know that you don't have to have those conversations because you have respected your own boundaries with it, it pays off. It does. The next one is similar to seeking out communities, but it's for more specific events. I promise to participate in LGBTQ plus events, pride celebrations, or support groups where I can connect with others who share similar experiences and perspectives.
Yeah, so these are like one-off activities like a meetup, a like potluck type situation, or, Pride happens typically once a year in your city.
Right. And some of these might not be comfortable for you.
Yeah.
If you're more of an introvert, then you may have to find more of a niche situation that really fits what will fill your cup up, because you don't want to be going and depleting. That's for sure.
All right, last section of self-acceptance and the promises.
Yeah, it's set boundaries and prioritize self-care. I promise to establish boundaries that honor my needs and comfort levels in sexual and romantic interactions. This is another one that I'm like, oh my gosh, 1,000 weights just got put on me because I feel this one so much. Thinking back to my journey that I've been on the last 10 months. I just establish boundaries that honor your needs. Sometimes you don't know. You don't know what your needs are and what your boundaries are until you're in them, Yeah,
it's like going back to the boundary thing. Sometimes that can change. And also, your boundaries might start off a certain way because you maybe don't trust fully that your partner is going to keep it. Mm-hmm. So as they show that they can keep boundaries, you may loosen certain boundaries to allow other things to happen.
You may also discover that you have tighter boundaries that need to be followed.
And we'll get more into that. Even if you're a single person, we're going to get more into that with the starting over as couples, because there are, things that we'll probably, clarify during that.
I do think that there's something to say here with your romantic relationship with yourself.
Oh, yeah.
That 100%. Sounds kind of interesting, probably to some, but I think I'm going to use maybe a little bit of a naughty or racy type of example. But if you're doing some self-exploration in a sexual way, there may be things that others are saying, you should try this, you should try this, you should try this, and you feel hesitant to do it. But after so many times of other people suggesting it, you're like, oh, okay, fine, I'm gonna try it. You're by yourself trying this, okay? And then you try it, and you are so uncomfortable.
Yeah, you get to control every aspect of that.
Yes, do not force yourself to continue doing something if it is feeling so violating or uncomfortable just because other people have said that it should work. There are no walls to break down with yourself in that sense. You feel it. You feel it when it's not right for you to be doing it. So watch that. But yeah, you do have a relationship with yourself. You do have experiences with yourself. I promise to practice assertive communication to express my boundaries and advocate for my own well-being in relationships.
Yeah, and this whole section about setting boundaries to prioritize your self-care goes along with one of the quotes and images that we put on social media where it says, your mental health is more important than someone's understanding. And the sub quote in that is to prioritize your mental health over anyone's comprehension. Your peace and happiness matter most, regardless of others' understandings. You don't have to keep having to explain yourself to make someone more comfortable.
Yep, this includes partners, family members, friends, coworkers even.
Yeah.
You don't have to
Well,
do that.
especially with coworker situations, there's probably some HR stuff happening where you need to certainly set boundaries. The thing is when you're asexual, or actually if you're in any aspect of the queer community, people automatically feel like they can ask you whatever they want to.
This is true. I've already experienced it a lot since coming out and discovering my asexuality.
Yeah, so you need to be assertive and say, I don't want to talk about this right now, and end it. And if they want to argue, if they want to do whatever, that's might be where you start cutting people off.
Assertiveness doesn't have to come off as aggressive either.
Nope.
It can come off as, I'm not really comfortable with this. Can we please move on to a different thing to talk about?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be aggressive. I don't know. I immediately think aggressive when I think of assertive, which is not good because they do not have to go together.
Yeah, 100%. The last section kind of sums up everything, I think.
Yeah. I promise to remember that self-acceptance is an ongoing journey, and it's okay to seek support and guidance along the way. Trust myself and my unique path toward embracing my sexuality with love and acceptance.
Yeah, so again, this is not just for the asexual person. There are a lot of allosexual people who have their own sexual orientation that comes along with that. You can be allo-romantic as well as allosexual, but be lesbian or be gay.
I have to unwind that in my brain a little bit, what you just said. Yeah.
Because
that makes sense. Yes.
There can be a couple with a non-binary person with a man, and the non-binary person is allosexual and the man is asexual. So understanding your own sexual desires, even as an allosexual, I'm heterosexual, but I'm allosexual. I may be bi-curious. I might not have given myself enough thought and understanding to fully understand my sexuality. And I guess if you are curious where you might fit, you can take the Kinsey scale test.
I mean, it's not going to be fail-proof.
No, but it might give you some ahas.
Right. Get curious with it.
All right. So as we move now onto the couple portion of this, I want to clarify, this is something that hopefully you and your partner have been communicating through either with listening to this podcast or generally speaking. And this is where it's really going to take a commitment from the both of you, or however many people are in your relationship, to say, I am ready to start over. I'm ready to build a new foundation.
Yeah, you have to be committed to being curious and kind through this process.
I'm ready to forget the past and start from right now, right this second. It's good to understand the past. It's good to understand things, but I want to start anew right now.
So grab some popcorn, grab a drink, buckle up.
Yeah. So this is the page 1 of Allo Ace Relationship Restart Workbook.
And the first thing that we're going to talk about is understanding each other's perspectives. And under that, it is exploring sexual orientation. So we ask that you start by discussing each partner's sexual orientation and how it influences their experiences and desires.
Yeah, so this obviously goes back to the last, worksheet of understanding yourself. So maybe you're not ready to fully have a deep conversation on this, but it's good to know where you're at and also understand how it influences the way that you feel. Like, I am an allosexual. I sexually desire people.
You sexually desire women.
Me specifically, sure.
Yes.
And as asexual, you might say, I am panromantic, asexual, sex averse. I know that I don't often want to have sex and I don't see anyone sexually, but I'm willing to have a romantic relationship with any gender, even non-binary.
Mm-hmm. And if you're not ready to have this part of the discussion with your partner or partners, I would highly suggest you go back to the first worksheet with having to do with yourself.
And it's also, again, this is not a one-day thing.
No.
This is hopefully going to be multiple conversations you have. So you can even circle this or put something next to it that says, I don't quite understand fully where I'm at, but at least you are starting the conversation.
Mm-hmm. And we did leave in the worksheets or workbook, we did leave a little bit of space to write notes if you want to under each little bullet point.
Yeah, and depending on what browser you use as well, like if you're opening this not with Adobe, because it is a PDF, but if you're opening this with, for instance, Microsoft Edge, it does allow you to put in text notes and stuff like that as well.
Okay. So, Skylar, I am an asexual panromantic person. Do you know what that means, Skylar?
It's funny. I just described what that was.
I'm just saying that's how you can start the discussion if you really want. I mean, it kind of feels a little robotic the way I just did it, but...
Well, and I think that if anyone has been in couples therapy and they start over and they have worksheets like this, they are very much like direct.
Yeah. Honestly, being direct has been really helpful for me in the last 9 months. So that's probably how I would say it to you if I was the one that discovered it myself.
And that leads into the next aspect of it, which is to share personal insights into what sexual attraction means to each of you. It may not be the same.
It may not mean much to you at all.
Or if anything.
Or it may feel like the world is on your shoulders.
And I think it's important for your partner to know exactly what that means to you. And just because you have sexual attraction doesn't mean that your partner has to fulfill that in return.
There shouldn't be an expectation that you need to be fulfilling all of these different things that your partner or partners feel that they're sexually attracted to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or experiences, what sexual experiences they're attracted to or desire.
So the first two, after that, the next part is like acknowledging and respecting that there are differences.
Right. Yeah. The acknowledging and respecting should that's for everything, for this whole thing.
Like I have said, I acknowledge that Jesse is not sexually attracted to me. I understand and I respect that. I'm not going to be like, well, that's too bad. You better figure that out and find me gorgeous like I know I am.
And you are. And I acknowledge that Skylar is sexually attracted to me. And I do respect the fact that he is allosexual.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The next section says clarifying expectations. Talk openly about your expectations regarding intimacy and physical affection.
This can be tricky.
Yeah. Is it the expectation word?
Yes, because just because I expect it doesn't mean that I deserve to have it or that I'm entitled to have it.
But you could expect to have respect.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we actually did a TikTok / now it's on YouTube about this very thing, really. Like, does my expectation mean that it's a reality? The answer is no. Because if I'm single, I can have an expectation that I have sex every day. But unless someone is offering to have sex with me every day,
you ain't going to be
my
having
expectation
sex every day.
is not going to be met.
Right. Yeah.
But I think it's good to understand where you are at a base level of what you see as intimacy and physical affection.
What you thought the relationship would be looking like.
Yeah, and we'll get to one of the pages. We'll walk through, how to maybe change that up.
Right. Consider how your expectations may differ due to your respective sexual orientations.
Yeah, so I am in a committed, at this time, monogamous, not that there is, any future plans to not be monogamous, but
it's good to leave the sliver there.
But it is, like, I currently am in a monogamous relationship with a asexual, sex-averse, leaning, repulsed person.
Mm-hmm.
So my expectations of sexual intimacy might not happen because of the commitment that I have made to be in this relationship with Jesse.
Exactly. And I've made it very clear that no one's holding him here. No one's holding Skylar hostage in this relationship.
I am chained to this bed.
You're not supposed to tell them.
Oh, yes. I have free will.
Refer to the cue cards, Skylar. Refer to the cue cards.
I have free will. I can leave at any time I want.
Yeah. So considering how your expectations may differ, in our situation between being allosexual and asexual, they differ a lot. Well, they did. They did.
They did.
They don't differ now, though.
Originally, they did. Originally, I would say they were black and white.
Yes, they were hard. They were very difficult.
So when your intimacy, so going back to episode number 3, where we talk about intimacy with expectations oftentimes leads to disappointment. If all that I knew about intimacy was the expectation to have sex at the end of any of it, then yeah, we were black and white thinking.
Exactly. But the most wonderful thing is that because we have talked through this and we continue to talk through this all the time, whenever anything comes up, we don't have these differing expectations now.
Yeah, and it doesn't take away from my wants and my desires. My wants and desires haven't changed, and Jesse's not asking me to. Jesse's not saying, I don't want you to think about sex or want sex or desire sex with me. That's not what she's asking. She's asking me to respect her boundaries.
Yeah, that's right. Explore ways to reconcile differing expectations and find common ground.
And we'll just put an asterisk on that says we will get to that on one of the papers that you'll fill out.
Yes, we do have a special paper for that. Finding common ground is incredibly important. And then the reconciliation part, that's what I feel we've had by talking. Yeah. We have had a complete reconciliation and we understand each other. And when we don't understand each other, we come back to exploring the ways where we can come back to understanding each other.
Yeah.
Right. But with all of that, you have to feel like you're in a safe space to be able to do that anyway, though.
Yeah.
You have to create that.
And that's where, you have to come together and say, I'm willing to start over and I'm willing to drop my guard and drop my, the negative things that are happening right now. And I want to understand and I want to do better.
If your partner or partners aren't willing to have these kinds of discussions with you, it's going to be difficult and you're going to be thinking of different things that might need to happen. Because there's only so much of this that you can do on your own. Really, this should just be about your partner's or partner.
Yeah.
With you. So, embracing differences is the next little section that we have here. It starts with emphasize acceptance and appreciation for each other's sexual orientations. That's actually, it's so simple when you put it down like that, but it goes so far.
Yeah. One is just saying, I acknowledge that you're asexual. The other is saying, I appreciate your asexuality.
I celebrate your asexuality.
I celebrate you as an individual and your sexual orientation. That is going to be pretty hard for some people.
It will. This message of, I'm so happy that you are asexual and have found yourself. You know what I mean? Woo! Can you imagine an allosexual partner coming to that point of being able to say that to their asexual partner?
Yeah, or even there might be two allosexual people. I don't know that why they, are possibly listening to this podcast, but you could have two allosexual people where one person is an allosexual who is sex repulsed.
Yeah, you could have that.
And you need to accept and appreciate that they are sex repulsed.
If you would like to continue having a healthy relationship with them.
Which is what this whole, worksheet is trying to do anyway.
Right. Validate each other's experiences and feelings without judgment.
Again, that's, I understand and I accept. No buts, no, well, in the beginning, you had sex with me 5 times a week. What the hell?
And it's okay for the person that wants to go to a judgmental place. Instead of being like, what the hell? I think the language needs to shift to, I need a moment to think this through. Because you want the non-judgment to be genuine.
Well, and it goes
not
back
just lip service.
Well, and it goes back to the self-acceptance. Like Jesse, well, let me say this. There are a lot of hurt feelings and a lot of people who feel like they've been led on.
I've made comments to that.
I know that Jessie did not catfish me per se. She didn't lead me on. She didn't understand herself. It is fully acceptable for people to be in a relationship and not 100% know what's going on.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of reasons people get married young. There's a lot of religious trauma or SA or other trauma that's happened where someone doesn't fully understand their sexuality. And so 5 years into the marriage, they're secretly trying because they don't want to hurt your feelings and say, I'm really not enjoying this, but, I'm just doing it for you. No, they're trying to understand and fully understand their sexuality. And so in the beginning, there may have been a lot more sex happening. And then all of a sudden it starts going down and then maybe slim to none. And then they finally say 5 years later, I'm asexual. And it's not this thing, well, that's crap because you knew from the beginning. You should have known. You should have told me from the beginning because
I wish I would have known.
I don't feel like I made, that I committed to this relationship with all of the knowledge. And I will say that there are some people who did know and they didn't tell their partner. And that is going to be something that you really need to...
That's going to be tricky.
...do some self-work on.
Yeah. And also thinking about if you chose not to tell your partner and you did know, then I think that that's something to explore. Why didn't you feel like you could tell them? That's very sad.
And that goes
but I
back
understand
to,
why it happens.
Goes back to naming your fears like we talked about.
Yeah.
I was afraid that you would leave me. I was afraid that you wouldn't marry me.
Yeah. And the thing is they shouldn't be with you if they can't respect and love you for who you are. I know that's hard. I know that's a hard thing to hear. But when it comes down to it, it is the truth. So
last thing on page 1 is discuss how your differences can complement and enrich your relationship.
Why are these all feel like, right, okay.
Yeah, it's... I do want to say, please, again, start over. Don't be upset with your partner if they say, right now, I don't know.
That's true. They may not know. They may have to put some thought into it or a lot of thought into it.
This can't be like, this needs to be a judgment-free zone and not get your hurlings felt, your feelings hurt by this thing of being like, right now, I don't know how your asexuality complements and enriches my relationship with you.
I'd like to be curious about this and think about it more.
But I would like to build and understand that.
Yeah. Oh.
That could be hard to hear.
So hard to hear. Right now, I can't point out any of the things that do complement us because of your asexuality. So let's just take a rain check, okay? Oh, okay. No. If that was said to me, if you would have to be, with this, you have to be so careful with how you're wording these things, right? It has to come from such a loving, curious place, because if Skylar came up to me and said that in the way I just said it, I'd be like, you can leave, right?
But let's flip the script.
Okay, let's flip it. Go ahead.
I can't see how your over-sexualization as an allosexual and putting that pressure on me sexually enriches me for my mental health or my relationship.
So you're saying it could be hard for me to find the complement, parts of your allosexuality complement me.
Yeah. Oh, because one thing that we hear a lot is that asexual people feel so bad and so much anxiety because of the needs, wants, and desires of their allosexual partner. Right.
They enjoy them so much, but they know that they have this feeling of not being enough.
Yeah. So it can go both ways. This isn't, again, this worksheet is not to point to one side of the fence. This is for both people. You can flip every single one of these and make it positive or make it negative.
Yep, I agree.
And so the ask is to find the positivity in it.
Yeah. And looking at these sections, it's okay if you choose a section to go over once a week. These can be quite meaty.
Yeah.
So take your time if you need to. Don't rush through it. Don't make it some timeline of it, that's not going to be enjoyable. It's just going to be painful. You don't want that.
And we realize this is a long episode. So feel free to pause and to stop and talk through these and then keep going.
Yeah, like I said, grab some popcorn.
Yeah, we're going to be here for
a minute.
All right. So section 2 and page 2 is going to start talking about communication and boundaries. All right, so 2.1, open dialogue. Foster a safe and supportive environment for open communication. So what that means is that your partner is going to be able to communicate with you and talk to you without feeling like you're going to freak out on them or judge them or tell them they're stupid or whatever. If Jessie felt like she couldn't talk to me in a safe way, she wouldn't talk to me.
It's true. It's true. And then ultimately it would end up not working.
So one of these aspects of doing this is by practicing active listening and empathy when discussing sensitive topics. What is active listening, Jessie?
Active listening is when you are fully engaged with what the person is saying. You're making good eye contact. You're responding in a light way. You don't want to be interrupting someone constantly, but yeah, interesting. Those kinds of responses. And then sometimes you repeat something that they have said so that they know that you are actually actively listening.
Yeah, the other part is not thinking about your retort
that's a
thinking
huge
about
deal.
what you want to say while they are talking.
Right.
And as Jessie said, being able to restate their statement. So if Jessie says, I feel like you constantly only want sex from me.
So what you're feeling is that I always just want sex from you.
So if I understand correctly, you don't feel like there's any other aspect of intimacy that I provide for you where you don't feel like I have an expectation of sex if I do this. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's really important to make sure that you're both understanding each other and you do have it right, what's being said or asked.
Yeah, and as part of that, we want to encourage honesty and transparency about feelings, needs, and concerns. Stay curious. So you want your partner to be 100% honest with you. You don't want them to lie. You don't want them to give a half truth. I want nothing but Jessie to feel like she can be her whole self and be 100% honest with whatever she's telling me.
I believe in not being scared of the truth, honestly. I believe in facing that, and I expect complete honesty from you.
Yeah. The section 2.2, we will again get into, there's a separate worksheet for this. So establishing boundaries. Identify and communicate personal boundaries regarding intimacy and physical touch.
Yes, we've talked about this. We know how important they are.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And then respect each other's boundaries and refrain from pressuring or guilting each other. Again, this can go, and this is where we want to say this. There are some couples where you are in a relationship with someone who is touch averse or touch repulsed. And so not everything can include touch.
Mm-hmm.
And that might be difficult. I'm assuming that you probably knew this while going into a relationship with them, that they were touch, sensitive. We see this a lot with people who are on the spectrum when it comes to autism. There's a lot of touch sensitivities. And so just, again, not pushing boundaries. This isn't about creating a boundary where the boundaries are being pushed or tested. It's about making the other person and your partner feel safe.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
And so the other part of this is discussing ways to navigate situations where boundaries may intersect or conflict. Someone may want something or have a boundary which doesn't align with the other person's boundaries. And so we need to navigate what that looks like. And if that's something that can be overcome, again, not as a way to push it, but we talked about this, I think, in the 3rd episode about asking clarifying questions. So your boundary seems to conflict with another boundary that you say. You say that you want physical touch, but you're saying that you don't want sexual touch. I need to understand what that looks like to you.
Right. You need to break that down a little bit more so that I can actually respect those.
Because they seem to be conflicting statements. And so I want to better understand how I can do one without the other.
Right. Yeah.
This one, you have to be careful with.
Mm-hmm. The next section is negotiating compromise. That lovely word.
Yep,
that all of us
compromise.
love. No, we don't. No, we don't.
Work together to find compromises that honor both parties' needs and comfort levels. That is a difficult one.
It is, but there is actually a worksheet to help bring the things together that actually find healthy ways to work around this.
Yeah, so we'll get into that a bit later.
Mm-hmm.
Brainstorm creative solutions for maintaining intimacy and connection without sexual activity. Again, that's going to come on a later sheet. But again, yeah, like thinking outside of the box of the norm.
Right. Be flexible and willing to adapt as you navigate your evolving relationship dynamic.
And that's where we talked about how a boundary may be a hard boundary with a lot of restrictions in the beginning, but as you build and as you grow as a couple, some of that might become a little bit more flexible because you trust and have a better communicative relationship with your partner.
But there are also things that you definitely should not be flexible on and need to adapt to.
Yeah, and it's good to understand, going back to the first page with understanding your sexuality, there are asexuals who are sex favorable. There are some that are kind of indifferent, like, take it or leave it. And then obviously you get into the more averse repulse where it's like, yikes.
Let me throw out a good example that doesn't have to do with scary compromises that shouldn't be happening. Let me throw out the fact that you could say that you love painting and your partner hates painting. Your partner could be a bit flexible and adapt to going on a date or put themselves in a situation where you guys are painting together. That's not going to be dangerous.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think that's a good thing to think about.
It's not going to affect their mental health. Like they might not want to, but it's not going to like make them have to go to therapy afterwards because of it.
Yeah. And finally, we have page 3, which is exploring alternative intimacy. The first section is non-sexual intimacy. Explore different forms of non-sexual intimacy that foster emotional connection and closeness.
I will say that a lot of couples including ourselves at some point, you end up, your relationship might look rocky. The communication has fallen. There's less emotional connection. There's less closeness altogether. People might find themselves like avoiding their partner because of sexual reasons. Like you just start letting it affect everything in your relationship. So we want to foster emotional connections. We want to foster, like, get back that foundation of closeness that doesn't equate to having sex.
And you can build that. So if you're someone that's in a situation like Skylar just mentioned, you can build that closeness by doing things that have nothing to do with touching each other at all. It could be go bowling together. It could be go on a hike. Go play pickleball. Like go do something active or go do something creative. You know, go to a paint night or something like that. It does not, I think that those things can break down those walls that have been built up in a non-threatening way. The next thing we have here is experiment with activities such as cuddling, holding hands, and spending quality time together. I really wanted to say those different examples that I just said just now so that you could look at it from a non-touching way, because I see this and I'm like, oh, we do have those that are touch averse. So I do want to throw out some other things here.
Yeah. And this first section really, again, touch averse aside, this is about establishing touch types of intimacy that are non-sexual.
Right. And they could feel sexual to someone though.
Yeah,
we do need to say that.
And that's where we talked about Jessie trusting my touch, and as she trusts my touch, I was able to touch her more in a way that could look sexual, even though it's not.
Mm-hmm, exactly.
So there are aspects of cuddling, like spooning, that can be very sexual.
And it can also be just not sexual.
Yes, especially depending on what you're wearing or not wearing.
Mm-hmm. And then we also have holding hands on here. So that can be looked at as a very, very intimate thing. Some people take hand holding very seriously.
You see this oftentimes in ethical non-monogamy, like swinging and things like that, where people assign value to certain aspects of their normal relationship that they don't allow during these times together, like no kissing, no holding hands, no stuff like that. So you really can find, intimacy with holding hands, and the other part of it is spending quality time together. Again, what does that mean to you? What does quality time mean?
And this may sound surprising, but I actually do think that hand holding can feel sexual.
Yeah.
Depending on what you're doing while holding. I don't even know how to explain this.
Like the way that you're caressing your thumb, the pressure.
Yes, yep. There are things that can make it feel sexual.
Is it interlaced versus clasped?
There are varieties here with hand holding. So discuss what types of non-sexual affection are most meaningful to each partner.
And there's a page for you to fill out for that.
I feel like that's the theme of this episode. Yeah. There's a page for that.
There's a page for that.
Yeah. So the next thing is emotional intimacy. Prioritize emotional connection and intimacy in your relationship. I really feel strongly that if you can come back to the emotional intimacy and connection, if you can build that foundation to be really strong, the actual sex part of things, it will shrink because the emotional is so strong everywhere else. But and again, I'm asexual, so maybe it's easy for me to say that.
Yeah, and there's going to be a time in your relationship where sex may just not be a thing because of age.
That's true.
And so do you still have any other connection with them after that?
Mm-hmm. Share your thoughts, feelings, and vulnerabilities with each other. This is a hard one.
Yeah, like vulnerabilities. That people don't like to be vulnerable. We talked about this in one of the episodes. Like, it's human nature to self-preserve. It's human nature to defend yourself and to, put up walls.
It is, especially if you've been in an atmosphere that doesn't feel like you can be safe and vulnerable.
Well, and you could have been in a relationship for 20 years, and over the last 15 years, you don't feel like safe in that regard to where you can be vulnerable. And that's where you now have to be like, okay, even though I have 15 years of history, I have to let that go. And I need to learn to now open up and be vulnerable.
But the other person needs to be saying the exact same thing back to you. And they need to show it as well. The other person needs to show it by not having crazy reactions to the things you're saying. You have to match your words.
Yeah, none of this worksheet or workbook is going to work if your partner is nothing but negative and closed down to the idea of any of this. It's just simply not going to do anything.
That makes me sad.
You can, I guess, it's hard. Maybe I can say this. There's typically in relationship 4 choices, and one of these choices is actually considered a non-choice. The first choice is that you can just ignore it. The second choice is that you can accept that this person is not going to change. The third choice, which is the non-choice, is that you can either use getting behaviors like threatening them, ultimatums to force them to do something, or why it's not a non-choice is because it's not great. You can't force someone to do something, but there are ways to use negative reasons to get someone to do something.
Manipulate.
And then the fourth choice is to leave. So you can do some level of trying to be a better partner for yourself, regardless of how your partner is acting.
Right. I would say it's actually really important to make sure that you've done your part to see what can happen.
Yeah. Like regardless of how my partner is treating me, obviously there are some things that you should never accept in a relationship.
Exactly. Yes.
But if they are generally a good person, but they just have just not very healthy thoughts, you can still, on your end, choose to be the best partner and the best person that you can be in that relationship.
Right. Within safe reason, do what you can, but don't put yourself in dangerous situations, of course.
Next one is cultivating trust and intimacy through deep conversations and mutual support. We've actually heard from a lot of people who these are, with listening to this podcast with their partner, these are some of the deepest conversations that they've had in their whole marriage.
That's mind-blowing. That makes me feel so happy that they're having them. It makes me feel a little bit nervous and scared, but it also makes me a bit sad too.
And I will say, even for Jessie and I, we have had, as she has trusted me and knowing that she had the trust that I wouldn't react. We talked about how I was the one that's like, I think you're asexual, but it wasn't in a negative way. It wasn't like, you don't like to have sex with me, you must be asexual.
No, it wasn't like that. But I do need to say that there were times in the past 6 years where I didn't feel safe to say something because of comments that Skylar had made. So it's been a built thing that has happened.
And that's where we talk about the words of the past affect the words of the future, and the words of the now affect the words of the future. So again, starting over and using your words in a way that build that trust that they can and will have these deep conversations with you, and that they know that you have that support of them.
Right. Yeah. Deep conversations can go so far, especially if you make it a practice, even if you have to do it nightly at the start.
It's almost like there are times when I'm like, Jessie, we need to stop talking about this because it's 1 a.m. and we need to go to sleep.
But we're having such a good time talking about whatever we're talking about.
And it's not because I'm sick of talking. It's just her and I could talk all day long about these deep conversations. And it's like, sometimes we just have to know when to be like, all right, let's, talk about this again tomorrow.
Yeah. And I didn't say the example of sometimes you have to do this every night to get in good practice of it, but also it could go the other way. Sometimes you may need to schedule and know that you're going to have a check-in and deep conversations every Friday or whatever day you would want to choose.
And that actually brings up a good point. And again, there are couples who do this in ethical non-monogamy where they have a daily scheduled meeting for a checkup. Mm-hmm. and they say, how are you currently feeling about what's going on? Is there any pros and cons? Are there any things that have bothered you this week? Are there any situations that you were in that, I should know about that made you uncomfortable,
Do we
etc.?
need to clear anything up?
Do we need to change boundaries? And so this can happen within your own, relationship. Having a weekly check-in to say, was there anything that I did this week that hurt your feelings that you would like to bring up with me? And I'm asking you, so therefore I should not be judgmental of it. I should accept with what you're going to tell me and respect it and be like, okay, I can see how that hurt your feelings and I apologize.
Yep. Validate, show empathy. Yes, that type of thing.
All right. The last part of this section before we get into some of these worksheets that you'll fill out is the creative expression.
Yes, get creative in finding ways to express love and affection outside of non-traditional sexual activity. That can mean so many different things. There are so many opportunities out there that may cost money or may be free. I already threw some of them out there. You could go bowling. You could go on a hike. You could go rock climbing. You could take a painting class. What else do we have, Skylar?
You could do something weird, like write a song together.
Yeah.
That might be funny, actually.
Write poems about each other.
Yeah.
I know that there's a trend right now on TikTok where you paint each other.
Please
actually try.
Yeah, be careful with that one.
Be careful with that one. I do think it's fun. Skylar and I have done this before that was happening, and it's a ton of fun, but we're not on board with someone painting their partner terribly on purpose.
What did I look like? I looked like a cross between the guy on Ice Age.
The guy on Ice Age?
The character on Ice Age.
Like the meerkat? Is that a meerkat? Oh, this is bad. I don't know. It was interesting looking. Let's just say that. But I didn't do it like it's
she
not
wasn't
like it was
trying to be
malicious
rude
or anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was being a bit artistic, but it wasn't in a rude way either.
No, it wasn't. It was very fun and enjoyable.
This next one is write love letters, create art together, or engage in shared hobbies that strengthen your bond. I think writing love letters would be great.
I think that's an interesting thing that isn't happening very much.
I think about like what you did when you were dating and like the text messages that you sent while you were, I don't like the word courting because it's such like a 1950s.
No.
I want to court you. Will you go steady with me?
I'm not sure I like that.
But, while you were dating your partner,
Getting to know them,
think back of the things that you would send them and talk to. There's a funny one that I sent Jesse back in the day about Pablo Picasso. Do you remember what it was?
Go ahead, tell them so everyone can barf a little.
I said, if you were around when Pablo Picasso was painting, he would have never had a blue period if he knew you.
Which is incredibly sweet, incredibly like just barf, but it's good though. It's good. It was sweet.
All right. The last part of this page is embrace your unique connection and celebrate the depth of your relationship beyond physical intimacy. Like, what makes you unique? If someone sees you and sees your relationship, what makes them say, you guys have such a unique relationship?
But also think about the fact that there is literally no one else that is you. So there's no way that someone brings what you have to the table because everyone is different. So it's unique all on its own without doing anything. You have to learn to look for the things that connect you in those unique little ways. One of my favorite things is when you have an inside joke or inside jokes that just live forever. I think that could be a really fun thing to think about, the different inside jokes that you have created over the years. I think that's a really connecting thing, actually.
All right. So these next pages, again, they're things that you are going to fill out. They're things that you're going to talk about. And the first one is 5 things that made you fall in love with your partner in the beginning. Really think about this, because this is the idea. The idea of starting over is going back to the beginning of why you're even together. Now, that might not be great for some people, but we're hoping that the majority of people like are in relationships that they want to be in and that they
started off
chose to be in
Yeah.
and was a healthy relationship. So when you think about why you're with your partner and why you chose to date them to begin with, what are 5 things that made you fall in love with them in the beginning?
Right. One thing that I just thought of that's really interesting is one of the ways you made me feel in the beginning of our relationship was no pressure at all, which is so interesting when we look back at the last 6 years.
Yeah.
I felt so safe and felt no pressure to do anything with you at all. You always had me making the first move. You never took anything in that way. You never had getting behavior in that way. And then obviously what's crazy is, that has shifted over time because I think I didn't know about my asexuality.
Yeah.
Then pressure did come. But that is one of the big reasons I think that I did fall in love with you almost right out the gate.
Yeah, because of the relationships that we were having that ended and that this was a new relationship, I said, I'm not going to make the first move on anything because I don't want to take anything away from you. Because I knew that there were guys that were messaging her that were they almost saw her as like some kind of prize to be won.
Yes, that's exactly what was going on.
And I didn't want to be one of those guys. So I said, I'm not going to kiss you. I'm not going to do this or that.
I'm not going to initiate that.
Because I want you to make a choice for yourself if that's what you want or not. There's somehow this like thing where the guy is supposed to be aggressive and to like take control and like grab you by the head and like bring you in for a kiss. And I'm like, no, I'm not doing that.
Right.
The thing that I fell in love with Jessie in the beginning was really her kindness and how she made me feel. Like I knew that I could be 100% myself. That she wasn't judging me for my personality, for the way that I act, for anything. I felt so safe to be 100% myself around her.
Oh, that's so cute.
This one that is now next is 5 things that you currently desire or are attracted to about your partner. Really think about this. And there is a subsection of what those can look like. Do we want to talk about those for a second?
Yeah.
All right. So you'll see a page that says different types of desire/attraction.
Right. And there can be more than this, but I think these are the big ones.
Yeah. And you can, there are like general descriptions of what each one is, but it might mean something different to you as well. So just keep that into mind.
Right. What we want to do with this is have you be able to look at these different types of desire or attraction and say, oh my gosh, yes, I am very sensually attracted to you. I love your intellect as well. It actually is supposed to help you say, these are all the things that are working for us. This is good.
Because what we are hearing in the community is that there are a lot of allosexual people who don't feel like their partner is attracted to them at all because they never hear anything about what their partner actually likes about them, as well as the asexual partner is like, the only thing that you desire about me is my sexuality.
Which it can feel like that, yes. So this is a good opportunity to really break down the different things that you are attracted to about your partner. On this sheet, we have platonic attraction, sensual attraction, romantic attraction, sexual, aesthetic, and intellectual.
And I want to clarify, like, there are a lot of negativity in the community regarding allosexual, asexual relationships with the word platonic. Like, I feel like I have a roommate.
Mm-hmm.
Platonic relationships
are incredibly important, actually.
And they should go further than just like, oh, I feel like a roommate. There is a
that is such a negative, it feels like such a negative thing to say, so they're your roommate.
There's a deeper connection that is still there. Like,
best roommate ever.
Like, what makes me want to share a lease with someone for like a long time? What makes me want to go on vacation and spend money and spend my free time with a person?
What makes me want to literally sleep in the same bed with them? Do you know how vulnerable that is to sleep in the same bed with somebody? So there could be no romance there in that sense, but you still feel safe and happy to be with them in close quarters.
Because again, when we talk about the umbrella of asexuality, there are aromantic asexuals where they don't feel romantic attraction towards their partner, but that doesn't mean that they don't want to be in a relationship.
That also doesn't mean that they have no feelings towards anything. I think that's a big problem as well.
100%.
Yeah. So it's good to look at all these different types of attraction and pinpoint and pull out all the ways that you are so attracted to your partner or partners and desire them, because there is a lot of desire there in so many different ways.
And this will help you to be able to complement your partner more if you understand these. So for instance, I'm not going to sit there and compliment Jessie all the time about how sexually attracted I am of her. That would make her feel uncomfortable.
It would be not good.
But it's good for her, and she described this, I think, in the second or third episode, that she wants me to be sexually attracted to her because I am an allosexual. And so for her, that is important to her.
Right.
So she already knows that I'm sexually attracted to her, but she might not have, any other things that she knows that I'm attracted to her. Like, I am romantically attracted to her. I love how she loves to be romantic with me. She wants to watch, the trash TV, as we call it. We have like these nightly rituals that are romantic.
Yeah. And you might not know that I am very much so intellectually attracted to you. I love the way that your brain works and that you look into things almost obsessively, and that we can have these educated conversations because of how that beautiful brain of yours works.
And I know that she is aesthetically attracted to certain parts of me.
I am. I compliment his arms often.
So these are things where it's like, I might not be sexually attracted to you, but I want you to know that, like, when I see you, I might say something like, "Ooh, I like your arms. Your arms look nice." And that should make you feel good. Or saying, I am in love and I am so attracted to the way that you think about things. I am attracted to the way that you make me feel safe in our relationship, that I know that I can say anything to you, and I know that you see when I'm having a bad day. I'm so attracted of how thoughtful you are when you see that I've been crying and you come comfort me without saying a word. I am attracted to the fact that you understand when I've had a bad day and you go and get me like my favorite drink because you know that that's going to cheer me up.
Right.
Like, that's something that I'm really attracted to.
All of these things, all of these different types of attractions can be very powerful if you allow them to be and if you appreciate them the way that they should be appreciated.
Yeah.
Next up, we have 10 of your favorite non-sexual ways to have intimacy and closeness.
And again, each of these sheets are to be filled out by each person. Mm-hmm. So this isn't just 10 where I give 8 and you give 2. This is where you have your own paper and I have my own paper.
Right. And if you don't want to print out the sheets that we've made, you can just sit down and list them off on your own little scrap piece of paper as well.
Yeah, because the reason for this, and I can't remember if we talked about this in any of the other episodes or if it's just some comments that I've been making on some of the social medias, but the reason for this is you're going to fill out 10 and your partner's going to fill out 10, and you're going to circle all of the matches.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be like a direct match. If you ever watch Family Feud, like, you get the point of certain things.
That's true. Yes, it doesn't have to be a direct match. What should they do if they can't find any matches, Skylar?
Then I would open up and have a conversation. I mean, this is 10 favorite non-sexual ways, you really should have something.
I hope you have something. If you don't, will you please message us?
Yeah, be like, I literally couldn't find a single thing that matched.
We would love to get curious with that and see where that can lead to. I'm serious. Please message us if this does happen.
I think, though, that, again, with the Family Feud, can you tie stuff to close enough together to where you can, like, be like, all right, these two things equal the meaning of this?
I think so.
I mean, that would be my guess.
Yeah.
Like, if you say, I like watching movies, and the other person says, I like cuddling, well...
If the person that likes movies.
Do you like being right next to me? Do you like sharing a blanket? Are we sharing the popcorn? Is my arm around you?
Yeah, check in with their boundaries and say, okay, I would love to watch a movie with you, and I love cuddling. Are you happy with us cuddling while we watch a movie?
Yeah.
Yeah, you compare them together in that way too.
Yep.
So they can match, or they can complement each other well.
Yeah, and these aren't necessarily things that you are actively doing right now, because we know that there are some rocky relationships. So,
right.
But that doesn't mean that it's not something that you would enjoy.
Right. So, but if you both enjoy going on walks, well, that is something that even a rocky relationship could probably handle doing, or something that has a bit more distraction. Like I said, if you both enjoy going to a movie, go to a movie. That should be a fairly safe bet. And then talk about the movie and what you liked about it.
And the reason for this sheet particularly is what you're going to do is you're going to take those matches and then you're going to cut off any expectation to sex or anything further happening with those matches.
Yep, you're going to enjoy them for just exactly what they are.
And you guys can decide, if that's something that you practice. Like, for instance, next week we are going to do, let's say that you had 6 matches. Next week we are going to actively, tell each other, let's cuddle, let's hold hands, let's watch a movie, let's give a massage, let's do this, 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 and this actively during this week and talk about how we felt. Mm-hmm. Because... if you can, if one of your things is, well, I like getting a massage, and mine is, I like giving a massage, but every single time that I have given you a massage in the past, you have felt that it was going to try to be led to something else, you probably wouldn't fully enjoy that massage, because you'd just be thinking this whole time of, oh my gosh, his hand is at my lower back. Is he going to try something? He's been doing this now for 10 minutes. Is he going to start, am I going to start feeling pressure? So your head is not into the relaxing part of the massage.
Right. I think that the person that, if that was the case, the person giving the massage can possibly lay out what's going to happen over the next hour. So that looks like, hey, I'd love to give you a massage because I know that you love getting massages. So I'm going to give you a massage for the next 20 minutes. And then after that, we're going to turn on our favorite show and have popcorn. So it really lays down the fact that you do not have any plans of taking it further.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so that's what the idea of listing these 10, and you might not have 10. However many you have that you can list, that's great. And maybe you can work together to fill out some other ones once you find any matches.
Yeah. The next thing that we ask you to do is to write down some boundaries that help you feel safe in your body and in your space, followed with, do you have any known triggers? We do have a sheet for this that has lines on it. You can use it, or you can just write this down. But I do think it's important to get out some of these boundaries and make it clear and known with the ones that you do know about, so that your partner sees it very clearly.
Yeah, not to feel like too much of a broken record. Obviously, we talk about the first part of that in episode 3 with the quote that says, respect is the bridge that connects healthy boundaries with meaningful connection. Mm-hmm. So this is the way to list out what is a boundary that helps keep you safe in your body and in your space, which hopefully then can be respected to go back to the previous page to make those activities feel safe. And then obviously in the 5th episode, we talk about emotional landmines. We talked about the triggers. And so, do you have any known triggers? Yes, when you are giving me a massage, when your hand brushes my side boob, that is triggering to me.
Mm-hmm. Yes. If you know of some triggers that you have, it is incredibly helpful to get it out there with the person that you feel safe with the partners you feel safe with, so that they can also know how to respect that. And if they see it happening or have a little inkling that it may be happening, they can approach you in the best way possible.
Yep. All right. So this next page is called Commitments You'd Like to Make and Do Your Best at Keeping for Your Partner. Think of this like wedding vows or commitment vows, partnership vows. So an example of this is, I commit to doing my best to listen to your concerns with curiosity.
I commit to practicing the ways that we can feel closeness and intimacy without expecting anything sexual.
I commit to listening when I have hurt your feelings, owning what I have done, and apologizing without trying to make excuses.
I commit to doing my best to have honest, open, loving check-ins with you about all the different things.
I commit to respect your sexual orientation and to learn more about what makes you you.
These are some great examples of what we're asking that you can write down and discuss with your partner.
Yep.
A few last notes that we want to say before ending this episode is that starting over in a relationship between an allosexual and an asexual partner can present unique challenges. This whole episode and the workbook that you can choose to use was created to help both partners navigate their differences, communicate effectively, and rebuild a fulfilling connection. By understanding each other's needs and setting boundaries and exploring alternative forms of intimacy, you can strengthen your relationship and create a more supportive and understanding partnership.
Starting over in this type of relationship requires empathy, communication, and a willingness to explore alternative forms of intimacy. Remember that every relationship is unique, and it's okay to work through challenges at your own pace. With patience, understanding, and mutual support, you can create a relationship that honors both partners.
We love this community so much, and we hope that this episode and the suggested worksheets and the podcast in general help with your journey through all of this. It's so funny. This whole last bit with the few notes, it just feels like what is the commercials for animal abuse, like with Sarah McLachlan singing? That's what it felt like. We should have some lovely music playing in the background.
I will remember you.
Exactly. We're not professionals, everybody. We're not therapists. We just wanted to create this podcast to help others going through what we've worked through and what we continue to work through. Because we're still working through it too, every day.
This is a journey. This is a daily commitment.
Yeah, and we just wanted to offer what we know has helped us.
So I'm going to put a poll on Spotify on this episode that just asks if this has been if you found that this worksheet has been beneficial.
Or this episode has been beneficial.
And you can say no, and that's fine. You can say that you're indifferent, or you can say yes, it has been. And if you are going to reach out to us on any episode, I think this would be the one to do it. We would really love to hear about what you thought about this episode. If you would like us to do similar things in the future, if these kind of having these study note worksheets have been helpful to go through this type of episode,
we've had a lot of mulling over with this episode coming up. It's been asked about since the beginning of the podcast. Since episode 1, we've received messages about how did you start over? How did you start over? So this episode has been incredibly important to us. So yes, please, please, please reach out and engage with us. We love it.
So thank you guys for tuning in, and we don't know what we will talk about next time.
It's going to be a surprise.
Surprise.
Yeah, and we won't be offended if you play this episode on 2 times speed.
I already know that I am generally a slow speaker, so, 1.5 times is great anyway.
Yeah. Anyway, we hope you have a great few days ahead. I want to say few days because you never know when we're going to release an episode.
We don't even know.
We don't even know. We just go off of our feeling. We're in bed right now recording this, and we love this community. Come say hi to us, and we'll see you next time.
Bye, guys.
Bye.